Same thing with buildings around here. We show up and there are fights, there are issues that arise with handing it out in that way. And then things that aren't as desirable end up discarded around the community. And the thing that I think is less obvious is when you're making these types of connections on the street, feeding or providing clothing and survival gear, it takes away an opportunity for a trade service provider to have contact and have a touch point with that person. So it may be helpful in the short term for the person, but they're oftentimes not getting what they need. And for the neighborhood, inefficient distribution and excess typically results in trash, debris, and unsafe and unsanitary environment. So I have a few examples of that. This actually was yesterday morning on a walk with the dog. And I'm certainly not saying this is all stuff provided by givers, but this is an example of what gets left grows source. Another example, tarps, clothing, general debris.
And so I don't know if in the morning sessions they told you this, but Denver Public Works now comes, I believe, daily to the Arapahoe Square part of the city to clean this up. And it's now really, not only are the things that are being given not helping people very much, but they're taking resources from the city that could be used in a more effective way, because we are now employing people from the city to pick up the trash that's left. So
to deal with that, yeah. And that, as far as I know, that effort is only 2 blocks wide. It's really just
right.
American House and different rescue mission.
Most of it's done by neighbors.
So these are really the some of the unintended consequences and the negative impact that these inefficient methods can have. I think John, you can talk about some of the ways that
Yes.
you can give.
Yes.
That are more I can still drive your life.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Could you? Because not be much appreciated. So yes. So having lived in Five Points for 25 years, we've seen a whole lot of inefficient ways of giving, but I've also seen a lot of really wonderful ways that people have found to help the homeless and the community, and in ways that bring. I really like the things that people have done that have brought the community and the homeless together. So I think that things that people can do that emphasize are much more meaningful for the community as a whole. So I have the 10 my top 10 list of things that I've seen people do. So next slide, which actually isn't the first one, but this is actually the overall concept that I wish people could understand, and I think it's so missed in this city that people who are homeless, in a very real way, the public space is their home. This is where they live, and if you came home every day and this is what your home looked like, how does that make you feel? How likely is that to help you in the process of recovery that you need? And so if we really truly care about people who are homeless in this city, the places that they occupy, the public spaces that they depend on, should be the safest and cleanest places in this city. We really should be making an effort to say, this is where you reside. We care about you. We are going to make sure this space is clean and safe for you. And I think that's actually opposite of what we do. Very often what I see is people saying, well, they're homeless. So they're gonna have trash around them, and it's gonna be unsafe, and we should just be okay with that. And if you're not okay with that, then you're anti-homeless. And to me, that's really unfortunate, because if you really care about the people, then you want them to be in a place that is healthy and safe and clean. So that's what I would like, as I think many of the people here are probably associated with the city of Denver, and so I'd like people to give that message to them, that's really a paradigm shift that we could make that would be truly meaningful. Okay, so now we're on to our top 10. So I'll start with safe and clean public space, which I kind of just talked about. And here are things that people could do that would make the public spaces safer and cleaner for the people who are homeless and using them. So this is Sunny Lawson Park. It's a couple blocks from our home, and this is a space that neighbors have taken on, working with people who are homeless, to clean up on a constant basis. So a few years ago, if you'd gone by this park, you would have seen it usually piled with trash and litter, and people just laying in the trash. And we took it upon ourselves to work with different agencies. We, for a time, worked with St. Francis, and we would have neighbors go from St. Francis with people who were utilizing the surfaces at St. Francis to the park to clean the park up, and the route that went from St. Francis to the park. And just making sure that the space is clean. And that has had a tremendous difference. And what we've seen is that once the spaces are clean, people are more likely to take care of them. So getting rid of the trash, actually people will then take more care, and you'll have less and less trash when the space is clean. And I'll tell you, we can go on to the next slide. So this is also Sunny Lawson Park, and one of the things that we've seen people do that are really meaningful is, instead of bringing food as the thing, and it's very logical that people want to do this. It's like, what can I easily give? Food. It's easy to make sandwiches or whatever it is that's that you have to make and to give. But oftentimes, as pointed out, it's not what's most needed by the people who are receiving the food. So we have some organizations. This is Absolute Word Church, which is located directly across the street from the park here. They've started doing activities in the park. Instead of giving food, they've started doing things like, this is a basketball and ping pong tournament that they do in the park. And they make an effort to ensure that the homeless who use the park and the neighbors surrounding the park and the people who come to their church are all invited. And so what you end up getting in these activities are you get people who don't usually get to communicate with each other, starting to tell stories and to understand each other better. And so that's something that I think givers could do. Instead of giving food, they could do activities that are meaningful for the homeless. And so this is one example. I'll give you two other examples of things that I've seen. There was a gentleman for several years who had a softball, created a softball league for the homeless, and they would play in Sunny Lawson Park at the field there. Another is an organization that's actually a CrossFit gym on the 2200 block of Champa, and their name is escaping me right now, but they have a service where the paying members subsidize the homeless members. So it's actually people recovering from substance abuse. Phoenix, yes, yeah. So that's another wonderful concept. So they're providing physical health and a sense of community that goes much deeper than just providing a sandwich on the street. So thinking about activities that could be provided instead of food is another one. Okay, next slide. Oops. The park stewardship program. So this is something that we've done with two parks in our neighborhood, the Children's Park and Sunny Lawson Park, both which are within the 3 blocks of the St. Francis Center. And these are parks that are constantly used by people experiencing homelessness. And what we've done is we've worked with neighbors and Parks and Rec and the agencies to create programs where we do care of the flower beds and the equipment and the parks in a way that brings together the homeless and the community. And the result has been really wonderful. I'll tell you the experience of how, what I have seen really interestingly was the people who started, the homeless who started working with us in these flower beds, went on to get housing and jobs pretty quickly. That it was really meaningful to them to have a sense of purpose and that really helped them get out of the situations that they were in a real way. So there are other parks. There are lots of public spaces in 5 Points, and we're not the only neighborhood, right? There are other neighborhoods that have service providers and housing that could be utilized. So I think that if there's a park space, that it would be neat if some of the organizations that are doing the giving could actually work on formalizing a stewardship program with the neighbors and the agencies that this could be like the model for. Next one. Give to meet actual needs. So this is actually from St. Francis's website. They actually have a place you can go and see what do we need right now. And this is their current list of things that are needed by the people who are accessing their services. So instead of the organizations that are giving deciding this is what I want to give, first go and ask the service providers, what do people need who are coming to get your services? What do they need? And then provide that. And that will be so much more useful and meaningful. It will help eliminate the duplication of services that Ryan was talking about, that we see so often where there's sometimes competing groups like, oh, in this corner you can get hot dogs this morning, and over here you can get, often it's hot dogs. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So instead of doing that, find out from the service providers what is needed, and then give through the service providers, or give in a way that's not going to create trash on the street.
Yeah, and I think Colorado Coalition for the Homeless has a similar list, breaking down by winter, summer, hygiene kits. So yeah, there's several.
Yes. The next one. Clothing and other items have a place. This is a picture of the Impact Humanity store. Has anyone heard of this store before? Okay, good. Yeah. Really wonderful concept. So I believe this building is actually owned by the Cousins family, who have owned many buildings along Welton Street and have provided this space for Impact Humanity. And what Impact Humanity does is they take clothing donations, And then the people in need can come and shop there for clothing. I don't believe they pay anything for it, but it's set up in the way any other clothing store is set up. So you are going through and shopping for clothing in a very dignified way, and that has such a different feeling from the people who come and bring boxes of clothes and dump them on the street corner, and then people go through them, and one, that ends up having a really negative impact, obviously, on the community because of the trash that's created, but two, it's not a really dignified way to treat people, to say, here, I'm just gonna throw stuff on the street corner, you just go through it. And that's, and if that were the only option, maybe okay, but it's not. There are other much more dignified options of how to give. And so really encouraging the people who are giving and the agencies that are giving and the religious organizations that instead of just leaving stuff on street corners and in public spaces, that they give through organizations like this, that they give to clothing to this organization or toiletries to the Mission and St. Francis, so that they can be received by people in a way that is more dignified and more respectful of the people who are receiving them. Next. Transportation. So this is something that I hear quite often from the homeless that I work with in Sunny Lawson Park, is they have a long way to travel each day. So if you have a person who's a veteran, it needs to access the VA, but then they need to get to Human Services over here, or they need to get to the Stout Street Clinic over here, and maybe they have a place to stay, but it's in southwest Denver. They can spend much of their day trying to travel around the city. And when they don't, and it's not super cheap to travel on RTD anymore. So that's a way that people could give that I think that they miss a lot, is RTD bus passes. And I think St. Francis has a way of giving.
We give them out for verified employment interviews or jobs placements, and also the medical appointments.
Yeah.
So with a verified purpose.
Right. So
there's never enough. There's always run out.
Yeah. So this is a place that's definitely in need. There's plenty of food, but there's not enough ways for people to get around the city. So changing that dynamic and saying instead of making breakfast this morning, what if instead we got together and got people ways to get around the city for the same money? It could be much more meaningful and impactful for them. So RTD is one way. There's also socks and shoes. So this is something that a lot of people who are in our neighborhood are without cars. But, and that sounds pretty obvious, but we don't think about that often in terms of what it means to their daily life, that they are dependent on walking in a very real way. And so the fact that they have both good shoes and socks, and that the environment in which they're walking is safe, is important. So, I would love to see some organizations really work on improving the environment for the homeless in terms of the sidewalks that they walk on. If you go down to the rescue mission many times a year, you literally cannot walk on the sidewalk. It is so covered in trash and tents and sleeping bags. People have to walk out in the street in order to walk along those blocks. And these are for people who are dependent on walking to get places. So those sidewalks, they should be clean and they should be safe, and we've totally missed that. So I think that's another thing. Another really good way that's getting better in Denver is bikes. There are a few different organizations. Bikes Belong is one, and I think there's a few others that provide bicycles either free or at very low cost to the homeless, and will actually help them with maintaining the bikes. There's a bike shop on our corner, Randy's Recycle Cycles, and it's amazing the business they do with people who are experiencing homelessness. That there's always people in there trying to get their bikes fixed, to get the tools they need. And but if you can bike, it's a really good way to get around this city. It's a really efficient way, often much faster than RTD. So, giving people access to bicycles if they're in a physical state where they can use them, making sure that the sidewalks are safe and clean and open for them to walk on, and providing RTD passes. Those are things that could be given by the giving community that I think are pretty much ignored largely. Next. Employment and skills. So this is not a hard physical thing that you're gonna give to someone, but it's a really meaningful way to give. I have examples of several organizations that have done this that I think are incredible. One is called Earthlinks. Earthlinks started out of the St. Francis Center, I don't know, a decade or more ago, huh? Yeah, quite some time ago. And this is actually a picture from their space where they teach people skills. They do gardening and growing of flowers and foods, and then they turn those things into products that are then sold. They're now located, they were on Larimer, and they're now located at 13th and Decatur, over by
Sunnyside.
Yeah, Sunnyside. And a really neat organization that has found a way to give people a real sense of purpose and skills that some of them can then use to get jobs. So people can either just give to those organizations, or they can come up with their own way of what do you have in terms of skills that you could teach to people experiencing homelessness that could help them in getting a job and employment and housing. Another good one is Denver Day Works that has started employing people who are experiencing homelessness in the care of parks, Civic Center Park mainly, but they're now trying to expand that into Arapahoe Square, around the shelters in Arapahoe Square. So actually giving them employment, and this was something that I pushed for really hard when I saw how, when we started working with the homeless in Sunny Lawson Park, we started giving, a little money to them to help us. And the impact that had on their lives was amazing. And so we really pushed the city, Parks and Rec and Councilman Brooks, and said, you've got to come up with a program that makes this more real. And Denver Day Works was their response to that. And I think it's working well, but it could be bigger, and it could be more meaningful. So are there things that you could teach, skills that you could teach to people that could be a way of giving? Okay, next. Now I'm going to go on to housing. So that's it, right? So we could just give everyone a home. That would be a really good, wonderful place to start. But often what we see when people think about that is they throw tents at people on sidewalks, and what that resulted in was a massive problem that around Samaritan House this summer, where the Samaritan House eventually asked the city to come in and clear it out entirely because they had buckets of feces and urine being thrown into their courtyard. They had fires. They had a tremendous amount of illegal and activity that was hurting the homeless in the place where they're supposed to be helped, right? That should be the area around the Samaritan House and the rescue mission should be the safest place for someone who's homeless to go, and it's absolutely not that yet. So instead of giving in that way, there are other things you could do to help people stay housed that would be very meaningful. Over half of Denver renters pay more than 30% of their income in rent, which means they're housing burdened. Is there a way that these organizations could provide assistance to families to keep them from losing their home in the first place? That would be fantastic, right? That would be before they become homeless. With a little bit of assistance, could they keep their current home? The cost would be a fraction of what you spend helping that family or that individual recover from homelessness once they've lost their home. So that's one way I think that could be very meaningful to give. Next. Support economically integrated communities. And this is a value statement on my part, and I'll make no apologies for it. So this is a picture of Arapahoe Square in the Five Points neighborhood. The building in the foreground is recently completed by the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, and it houses, I believe, 100 units of housing for people who were very recently homeless, right? So literally taking people off the street and giving them a home. Behind that is a new 13-story building that's market rate, intended for downtown workers who will probably pay $1,200 a month for a and then behind that is a skyscraper where people pay ridiculous amounts of money to live. This is all in the same neighborhood. And
Urban Peak is right there.
yes. Oh yes, absolutely. And then Urban Peak is here. And this is all in the same neighborhood. And what's wonderful about this is that people, their current economic status, have an option of staying in their community. They don't. So if someone in 5 Points loses their job, there's a good chance that they will be able to stay within their neighborhood. They won't be uprooted from their community and have to leave. And I think that has a lot of benefit for people if they're in a hard place in their life, if they're about to lose their home, and not only are they going to lose their home, but they're going to have to leave their community. They're going to have to leave the support system that they have. They're going to lose their church. They're going to lose their school. They're going to lose the grocery store that they know where everything is. They're going to lose all of that at once. That makes it so much harder to recover. But if we can start encouraging our cities and our governments to build neighborhoods that are economically integrated, so that people, when they have hard times in life, they don't have to leave everything. They may have to move. They may have to move from this home to a smaller home, or from a home to an apartment, or from an apartment perhaps to a shelter for a time until they can get back to a home. But they don't have to leave their community. And I think that could be really beneficial, and it reduces the segregation of people. And I feel like when people are segregated, it makes it much easier for people with resources to forget about the ones without. Like, they're not my problem, I don't have, they're not in my neighborhood, right? Well, they're not in your neighborhood because when they lost their job, they had to leave your neighborhood. It's not that they aren't your neighbors. So that's a different way of looking at it, and something that I think the giving community could help with. And this is a policy issue. So you can give in other ways other than just giving money and giving resources. You can give by advocating for the homeless, for lower income people in the political system. Because very often they don't have the time or the energy or the know-how to advocate for themselves. So helping, that can be a very real way to give to people. Next. Housing that really works. This is the Beloved Community Tiny Home Village. You probably, has anyone not heard of that? Okay, good. Good. So this is an example of something that we saw happen in our neighborhood in 5 Points that was truly transformative for the people who use the village and for the neighbors around it. Because the neighbors around it got to interact with people in a very meaningful way in this setting. The Beloved Community Village did, they would do neighborhood potlucks, they would do things that were really meant to bring the people living in the village and the neighbors around it together, and created a sense of community that was fantastic. And I have to believe that if other neighborhoods could experience what the Beloved Community Village was to us, that they would be far less afraid of having similar housing or housing for the poor, housing for the homeless in their communities. If you go by the Denver Rescue Mission on, at Christmas time, and you see blocks of people and trash everywhere, you can see why this person going on their way to the suburbs thinks, oh, no, I don't want that. But that's not what it has to be, right? This can be the model for how you house a certain number, not everyone, but a certain number of people. And so advocating for, if you're an agency that has land that could be used for a community village, if you're a church that has a giant parking lot that only fills up at Christmas, these are just thoughts. Is there a way that people can give land to projects like a Beloved Community Village? Next. And that's, this is the last slide, and the last thing I wanted to just leave people with is to give with respect. That when you give, it should be not just to help yourself, but to really give in a way that is respectful of the people who are receiving the gift. And that if you treat people like they can't help themselves, it diminishes their ability to help themselves. And the fact is that the people experiencing homelessness, they are dignified people, and they if you treat them with respect, that builds respect, that builds their own self-esteem, and that can be very meaningful. If you give to them in a way that says, I know that you are a responsible, valuable, important human being, then that is more likely to lead to their recovery, as opposed to if you throw a box of clothes in a park and say, don't go through that, I know you can't do anything for yourself, so have my leftovers. That's not respectful, and that's not helpful in the long run for people. So just give in a way that does truly respect the people who are receiving the gift. And I think that's the end of our presentation part.
And you get 159.
And yeah, so we wanted to have like a little time, leave a half hour for us to have discussion and questions from people. Yes.
You said that 6 groups were coming in on Saturday mornings. Have you tried getting them together to show them something like this? As to how they can do something better together?
So the efforts that have been made so far are, Tom from St. Francis has gone out and talked to them and said, hey, you know, would you come in and feed through the center? And in most cases, it hasn't been successful.
Most people have their own agenda,
Yeah,
and it's hard to break that down. But direct this information would be helpful in breaking that down.
well, that's right. And so that's actually why we came to this.
We have breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day of the week down here.
You can,
It's the thing, yeah, it's just a simple thing.
yes,
And
yes.
that's the point, really. We, in a meeting recently, I think the consensus among all the service providers was there's without a doubt plenty of food. There is no one going hungry. With zero, even if there were no people providing food on the street, there would still be plenty of food. So really, your efforts are better placed giving it up.
So what we've been thinking about is I know Ballpark made an effort years ago where they would go and give something to people saying, here's where you can feed. And it was not well received, but I have to believe that it could be done better. So we could work more successfully. We did have one success story, and I'll tell you what that was. The success story was we had a group that was loading homeless people up on buses and bringing them to Mestizo Curtis Park and giving them a breakfast, and then they would leave. And they would just leave the homeless there in the park. And by the afternoon, it was a mess. Like there was trash everywhere, and people were fighting. And so we met with that particular church that was coming. I think it was there from Thornton. We met with them and the council person, and we said, you know, this isn't happening in a vacuum. What you're doing has an impact, and here's other ways you could give that would be meaningful. And that did work. So it can work, but it has to be a really concerted effort for it to work. And we want to, you know, I'm open to ideas about how we reach people more effectively than we are now, because we're not reaching them very effectively at this point. I'm curious what organizations we have here in the room today. So, how many people are employed with a service provider or with a service provider? Great. And then people with the city, are there people working with the city? Okay, wonderful. And people with organizations that are out giving. Yay, wonderful. Thank you for coming. So I would love to hear from you, from your perspective, what would be helpful for organizations that are giving in terms of knowing the best ways to give?
Halo's been around for 3 years, and basically it's a connection.
Oh, cool.
It's simply the connection. I don't care if you give them socks, I don't care if you give them food, I don't care if you give them bread. It's the connection that makes a difference.
We get to make a personal.
We get a testimony, we get to know them as a friend.
Uh-huh. So yes, so it's the respect that you're building with them, and the human connection.
Yeah.
That's really helpful to them, yeah.
We've earned their respect where we could go and service them and they would come and unload our trailers for us, set up our tables for us now. We've earned their respect with, it's a friendship now. We don't call them all homeless or anything, they're all friends.
Right, yeah.
They're real friends.
And that's the same for the people that I work with in the park. I would never, people experiencing homeless is such a long thing to say. I think we need a better way of talking about it. Other questions or thoughts or comments?
In the morning session, a gentleman said it was unhoused neighbors.
Unhoused neighbors. I like that, yeah, that is good.
I think from a service provider, I'm with Green Peak, so I'm right there, and I see it all, and I have very mixed feelings, pretty much hour to hour, on how I feel on a lot of it. But what I do think is that coordinated effort, like Safety Crisis Center does amazing work, and Denver Restoration, Samaritan House, and Mount LA, and all of us are doing amazing work, and I think Denver, in a lot of ways, can become overly saturated. I mean, we're an organization outside of Washington, D.C. that has more nonprofits per capita than any other city.
Oh, wow.
And we're all going after the same dollars, the same resources, and I think to a lot of people's points, if we did it more efficiently. And also, I think that sometimes we come from the point of view that we're the experts, but the reality is the folks that are living this are the experts. And so we need to be really careful to ask them, what do you need? What do you want? Rather than us assuming that we know. And I think that's something that the service providers do well with the needs list and things like that, is we really listen to our stakeholders and we say, what do you need? Because sometimes they may not need socks.
Yeah.
Sometimes they may need socks. It's very fluid. It changes regularly. And so I think we need to listen more.
And that's one because we see pretty split to it.
Yeah.
Just hearing people who are aside from people in the audience, having people in front of us who are.
Actually, there was a panel this morning of lived experience back at the McNichols. It was on the second
Okay.
floor. It was excellent, too.
Yeah, I just wish there was more of that.
Sure.
I think it would be good for, so this is the first year they've done this, and they want to continue to do it, so, so that would be useful for us next year, is, we'll invite people from the park who've worked with us in the programs to come to the event, to share their experience. Yes, that's a great idea. What are, so I'm curious about how the coordination works. It would be, I mean, would it be Denver's Road Home that would be that coordinating agency?
Because it doesn't seem like they're, like you just said, you're with Urban Peak, St. Francis Center. There doesn't seem to be any sort of board or MDHI. Are they really that involved at that level? Okay.
And I'm not at that level, so I can't really speak to it. But I do coordinate a lot of the in-kind stuff for the volunteers and stuff. So, and oftentimes I just pick up the phone and I call the other service providers, just so I have a sense of what's going on, or I look on their website. Yeah, there's nobody really bringing it all together on that level, but I.
Yeah, and there definitely doesn't seem to be any coordination with givers outside of the service providers community. I don't, and unless I'm
Like,
couldn't
yeah,
find it, but there's not a resource where if I'm a church in Thornton, where you can go to a website that gives you a good idea of the best ways that you can help. Is there anything like that?
Yeah, 211.
211 is what it is, but they,
It's
yeah.
dog 211.
Yeah.
It's dog 211.
So, but that could be something we use in reaching out to people who are, leaving clothes on the street to say, instead of doing that, call 211 and find out what's needed.
And there's also a website too that lists by like your area, specific area, it lists service providers, different resources in that specific area that you can look up. But it breaks it down by like whether they're looking for housing, transportation, food pantry, services of that nature.
What's the website, sir?
Great. But yeah,
And I'm Victor, I'm with Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. I'm over their veterans program. And a lot of what I see is, like a lot of our clients, we have like a stable of clients that are like Denver natives, you can say. They're specific to this area. That's about 2/3 of our clients. And then we have 1/3 that's just people that are new to the area. And they came to Colorado because, like the young lady over there said, Colorado is awesome compared to other states when it comes to serving the homeless community. Yeah, Colorado is like the top 3.
oh,
Like
So,
the top
right.
3 states with providing services to the homeless community. But you do have that 1/3 of clients that are coming from out of state seeking services. They're homeless. They weren't prepared for the situation when they got here. As far as they thought, hey, let's move to Colorado. They weren't prepared for the housing market and the cost of living here. And so, you know, they move here trying to improve their lives, and it doesn't work out the way they expected. So they're going to be stuck in that homeless rotation of going on the streets and the shelters or staying with extended family and friends. And then the 2/3 that are our clients that are Denver natives, those are the guys that, yeah, we have, they know the resources in the area, they know the service providers, the Denver Rural Homes, the BOAs, the Colorado Coalitions, then they know the local churches and organizations they can go to get food and, you know, other services. But, I mean, it's like an endless circle with that. It's not gonna stop, because no matter how many pairs of socks we give out or how many meals, they're going to be stuck in that situation. So as we do meet with those people to give them that hot meal or that winter coat or whatever, we try and talk to them and kind of get a feel for what their situation is, and just try and guide them towards those services, help them to improve their situation. And you know, because our end state is we want people to get housed. That's our end goal. So if you're on the streets, yeah, socks are cool, hot meal is cool, but what can we do to help your situation and get you housed? And then we've even seen situations in, like you mentioned, that coalition property that you showed earlier.
yeah.
There are even people that get housed, and they've been so, homelessness has been so ingrained into their state of being that, you know, we get them housed in an apartment, then we have to give them classes and stuff on how to live inside. We
Oh, wow.
have to provide guidance and case management on how to maintain an apartment. They're so used to being homeless, they have a house, they go in and they sleep on the floor. They won't sleep in the bed, you know, they'll sleep on the floor, or we'll get them housed, and there's certain guidelines for them being housed. But they have other homeless friends that are on the street, so they're like, hey, you know, I have a house now, come stay with me. And in doing that, they end up breaking the guidelines of their lease and stuff, and then they're, you know, a couple months later, they may be back out on the streets if that isn't fixed or whatever. And it's just an ongoing situation. It's like, even once you get them housed, that's not the end. There's still ongoing situations that need to be addressed, depending on that person in their particular situation and what's going on. So, I mean, it's an ongoing cycle, so there's no easy fix to it. And, yeah, every little bit helps, every little bit counts. But, yeah, at the end of the day, I think, especially with this Colorado winter and the freaking, that cold freeze that just happened, that was in Chicago.
Oh, right, yeah,
That could happen here,
60
you know?
below.
You never know. That could always happen here. So it is, you know, that is our goal, is to get everyone housed. And you were right when you were saying that service providers, the local community, we need to come together, we need to talk, we need to communicate so that we can cut through the red tape and all the BS and provide services. So at my particular location, we focus on vocational services and employment. So we can partner up with another agency that provides housing And then another agency that provides those counselings about mental health services or substance abuse services. That way, when a client comes and sees one of the agencies, they know that they can get a full circle of treatment. So if they go to Mental Health Center of Denver and they're talking over there and the guy, is telling them whatever their mental health issues is, and he brings up employment, you can be like, yeah, I have a contact over at Colorado Coalition. Let me give him a call and give you his information so that you can meet there and come over here. I can talk to him about employment. He mentions housing. Oh, I have a contact or I know someone that does housing. Let me give you their information and do a warm handoff to this particular agency. And it just helps the client because they know these agencies are working together, and it just kind of streamlines the process because if we have these contacts, we can either simplify the process of getting that client enrolled in their services, or we can at least know what the process is so that it's not a hardship on getting that person the help that they need.
You know, what you've just been talking about brought up for me an idea is, so the neighbors that live in these neighborhoods, we're there all day and all night. And we are in constant contact with them because they are our unhoused neighbors. But we don't know where to tell people to go, where these services are. So maybe an effort to educate the neighbors about, if someone is laying on their street corner, or if someone comes to you and people do stop us sometimes and say, where do I go, what do I do? And we just say, go to St. Francis. But if there was something that we could give to people, that says, here's a list of resources around the city that you could use. I think neighbors would love having that.
Isn't there that shelter pamphlet that was in all the bags that we got?
Yeah, that thing is great.
That could be something that could be given out to the RNOs, to the neighborhood organizations through our new, most of the neighborhoods have little newsletters that they have. That could be something put as an insert along with an article into the 5 Points News and the Curtis Park.
What's RNO?
I'm sorry, good question. Registered Neighborhood Organization. So there's like, I don't know, hundreds of them probably. But, you wouldn't have to deal with hundreds of them. You would just be dealing with the ones that are around where the service providers are. And just say, let's get this pamphlet and an article into your newsletter so neighbors know what to do to help, to get people to service.
Well, and then there were always in our back page, the inside of our back page, we got a whole list, a whole page.
So, yes, so that's another, so just getting us that list of resources to neighbors.
Yeah, and with, excuse me, North Denver Social Justice, which is a small community group, very small, 100 people. Excuse me. But we're seeing in Sunnyside and in the North Denver neighborhoods, not a concentration of people experiencing homelessness, but more and more people sleeping in cars, scattered throughout the neighborhoods. People who are working, pet owners, people who maybe don't fit into a traditional service model or may have trouble accessing services downtown because they can't access parking or they don't have time to take a bus downtown to get to their job. And so I'm just wondering whether anyone has any successful strategies excuse me, regarding helping unhoused neighbors who are living in different ways, like living in a car with 2 dogs, trying to get to drug testing and probation and a job and, get to the food bank between the hours of 12 and 2, and navigating all of that is hard. And there are a lot of homeless people, I would say probably hundreds, including a lot of aging adults living in cars in my community. How do we get the services to them at the times and in the ways that are more beneficial, because they're not able to access a lot of it right now?
I actually heard about something at one of the volunteers at the Denver Public Library, this one, pretty sure she works at this one. She's doing some stuff on vehicular homelessness and trying to outreach that network a bit more and find out exactly what you're talking about. And I think I have her card, so we can connect afterwards. But I do know that there's definitely some work around that. I think people were trying to coordinate with some of the Walmarts to find like safe sleeping places and that sort of thing. But I'll have to get you her name because she knows more about it than I do.
California does that. They have safe parking program where the churches open up their lots and there's a security guard, there's porta potties, and they bring in the social workers to get the people.
Yeah,
Yeah, there is-
a lot of these agencies have outreach workers too, so Urban Peak has outreach workers who are between the ages of 15 and 24. So if a concerned citizen calls and said, I'm seeing this influx of potentially young people in my neighborhood that might need some services, our team will actually go out.
They'll go to.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the end all be all, but it's a start, and it's building that relationship and that trust that brings people into services and engages them. So we might try that. I mean, other agencies, I'm sure quite a few of them have outreach.
Any ideas on pet ownership? I mean, I know there are some resources, but you're seeing a lot of pet owners choosing homelessness because they can't get into.
They're not gonna go ahead. Yeah.
I think that's one thing John didn't touch on too much in this context, but and Andrew touched on it earlier, is a model that is more dispersed and your economically integrated concept kind of goes towards this, but essentially creating places for everyone and within communities and for the various needs.
So getting a wider range of housing options for people that, and that was kind of what I was trying to get at with the last slide with the Glove Community Village, but that's not the only other thing. The current model that we have don't work obviously for enough people that we've got a lot of people living in cars or trying to sleep in tents. And so how do we do that? How do we create other spaces for people to live in, but throughout the city, so that they're not all forced to go to one place?
Which duplicates resources.
Which, yeah.
If you have a decentralization of your giving, you're helping throughout the community, not just in one area, where suddenly you've got people doing the same thing in one area, then it duplicates. But if you found a way to decentralize it, and people's efforts could be spread out, you wouldn't have as much duplication issues.
Yeah, you'd be more likely to,
And some of your ideas of giving spoke to decentralization, like the transportation piece. If some churches that are based in certain outer ring suburbs tried to find a way to connect with those folks and do these things in their areas as well, not just have to get in vans and come to downtown,
yeah,
they could be helping people in their own neighborhood.
yeah. Yes.
The reason why a lot of people from North Glen and Thornton come down and serve down here is because it's against the law to be homeless in those cities. So there's no place to serve for them because they are hiding. You cannot find them. So they come down here and serve because that's what the church is made to do, is serve. If they can't serve in their own city because it's against the law for them to be homeless, they push them down here.
And this is what you were talking about, the 1/3 of people who are coming here from other
Right.
places. Because in some cases, I'm sure they're being pushed.
They're being pushed. In Thornton and North Glen, you find all the homeless people in storage units sleeping.
Oh, storage units.
That's where they sleep in those cities, because if they get caught, they go to jail.
So that's an area where people can work on policy. Yeah, public policy. It's saying, it is really important that we help our neighbors in need here in our
Makes
community.
sense, but
Because it is better for them if they can stay in their own community and not be forced to. I speak to a number of people who are afraid to get to the services because of the situation with drug dealing that happens around the shelters. And I've heard from people who are in recovery who will tell me it's their trigger, that they can't go to Sunny Lawson Park because they'll be triggered back into addiction. So So there is a good reason to try to really work towards a situation where people can access what they need in their own communities, and that they're not stigmatized because they're poor or because they've fallen on hard times. They are very valuable, important people in our communities, even if they don't have money.
And that integration is easier when you have smaller communities like
Yes.
the tiny home village versus this. We talked about this a little bit as well. But when you have all the providers in one area, it creates segregation. You have an area where the homeless people stay, and then the area where everyone else stays. There's very little interaction between the communities.
But if you've got like the tiny home village, which is more integrated into a neighborhood, it really creates that sense of, it changes the dynamic entirely. It changes, instead of, oh, they're one of those people over there, they really are part of your neighborhood. And that's really valuable.
And I think especially for us at St. Francis Center, and I'm sure for all of the other providers who work very closely with volunteers, I mean, we have over 300 volunteers that are essential to the operation of our facility, is that, and we certainly don't want to discourage anybody from giving to our areas, because that is where the concentration of those folks experiencing homelessness is. I think for us, it really is just an encouragement to work with us, not against us.
Right.
And to really work with us to see what it is that we need, because the reality is we don't need food in our area. We need folks that are willing to come in and work directly with the guests and have that interaction and have that involvement and give directly back. So I think that's a really important thing for us to say as well, is that we want to encourage folks to come from all over. We have volunteers that come from all over. And then we have volunteers from our own neighborhood, so it's great to have that diversity as well. We just encourage to come and work with us to find out what it is that we need to provide the services that we need to provide to the folks that need it.
Yeah, yes, that's really well said, that we want people to come.
Right.
And when they come, we want them to coordinate so that what they're giving is actually what's most beneficial. And they should want that too. If you want to give something, how many, you give someone a birthday present and you know they're going to re-gift it the next day. You might as well not have. So
or along those lines, if you
give
them a gift that 4 other people are going to give them, it
yes,
does make it a little.
It's like a wedding registry, right?
Private.
Don't give them another blender. They got one. Let's see. Well, I think we're almost out of time. Is there any other last little? Well, thank you very much for coming to our session. What you heard, and we will work on things to make our efforts better and bring more people to the event next year. Thanks.
Because there's no safe parking.
Everyone we still
Oh, it's at the post building? I didn't know that. You sure?
It's not.
It says Lockwood Library and Denver Post Building.
Okay.
And a lot of this place are staying there.
Like I said, the state that way the social workers come in.
Right, so we tried that, it didn't work out
I usually keep it in the part right here.
If you're a navigator for here, Cecilia,
It might be, but there's a few navigators. It's not, it might be Cecilia. I'm pretty sure she's at this location.
I met her last Tuesday when I was going to work on Garland.
Okay, right on.
Up on the
Yeah,
fourth
This
floor.
will actually not
yeah, if you wanna send me an email in a couple days, I'll kind of like,
And
go
then-
through my old card and like, see my name is, and I can send an email.
Gotta be good.
But I know she's already working on that. It's definitely, homelessness is a large issue, and I think it's definitely something that the city employees are. But I know that there's out
You know,
there.
and I don't think
It's hard to keep track of because those folks need to get where they can get, and I found this spot, and I'm telling a guy about it, so I cleaned out.
exactly, and there, because there's this big outside, a lot of this is.
And same thing with pets, they won't ask.
And I mean, I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, this is great. It would make
No, you're absolutely right.
The pets, yours said the pets, right?
The past.
No, it was something else, I was
Probation, or drug testing, where you have to go to the job application, or grew up in the neighborhood, was in the neighborhood, lost their housing, and they chose to stay because
Okay.
it's their neighborhood, it's their community, they want to stay there.
Okay.
And also they know people who.
Yeah, that's it's an issue of distribution, right? We got plenty down here, but we don't.
It's sustainable and it's not scalable. We also have outreach challenges. We got a new commander and now it's just chase homeless out.
How do we reach those?
And so they
Yeah,
like
that's what we were just talking about.
Adams or something for the night. It's a bad situation. It really is. Probably every
That's
other block.
fantastic.
There's
So,
somebody
perfect.
with a car.
And then we worked at St. Francis the second Saturday of each month.
I'm in Sunnyside, so it's just right up 38, which is the bus line.
So we do
So,
socks.
yeah, so if you think about like how people are being pushed to the margins, they're pushed to the margins, there's a big homeless camp in Lodi, and then there are a lot of car sleepers in kind of Sunnyside, which is north of 38, and the more it's been gentrified, down to like Sheridan, and then the cops are really unhelpful. Yeah, really unhelpful, so it kind of stops there. Yeah, but anyway, it's,
You know, give them another resource that goes.
people want to help, and a lot of us know these neighbors, I mean, it's been
Yes,
years.
that's,
So
yeah,
if we can
yeah.
get 6 people in the morning time on the second Saturday and have them work together as a team,
I've
that's
been
half
there
the
their entire lives.
We'll feed them too.
And there's like,
Just some ideas.
I like that.
there's one food
Wonder,
bank, but they have really limited hours.
It would be neat
So it's
to,
just people who are working or are sleeping nearby.
like,
It's just a little challenge. So anyway,
organize
just really interested in.
the way, the
To
fairness,
develop some community.
like, instead of in the parking lot, maybe in the Sunny Blossom Park, have it more, more organized, so it's a nicer place.
Well, there's still 3 of you in here, huh, guys? How was the event? I was in the other room.
Oh, okay. Oh, cool, okay, okay. So in St. You're in St. Francis. Got it.
I'm gonna get that real quick. Do you know who the commercial builder was that they were talking about for the development? Okay.
Because there's a whole liability if you don't cook it.
Yeah, we do our food without doing it on site. We drop it off, or we feed on the mall without permits, but it's one of the group, and I was live streaming and apologies for interrupting. One of my people asked who's the developer in the compound that you're talking about.
Which compound?
I don't know. I was in the
Is
other
it
room.
the tiny homes?
Oh, the tiny home village, oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, the tiny home village. That's not a developer, guys. You guys are in the wrong mindset. That's all done locally with
The
T-Hole.
beloved community, the beloved community, it's, well, I have,
What do you guys feed?
Hey, Peter.
What do you guys do for meals?
Meals, we have,
a Meals on Wheels advocate that makes 250 meals with us.
What's
the
his
second Saturday of each month.
She's
And we
been
bring
in
it
the room
Cole,
next door.
yeah, Cole
And we
Chandler.
bring, we serve the pantry and Tom at St. Francis the second Saturday for the last 3 years.
Okay, because we would love to have one of your guys' representatives in the room next door as we were talking about getting standards and practices and knowing who the NGOs and the non-NGOs are, and I have so many papers in here. Oh my gosh, like a jacket full of stuff.
Right.
That's not the, yeah, we all know what that is.
Right.
Cannabis, if you didn't know.
See, we also know that when
I
you
have
go
that guy's
downtown,
number,
downtown and serve, you
curious,
got 40
the
minutes to
guy
get in and
that
out.
did
and
this.
For where?
When you serve downtown,
You know it?
you have pretty much like 40 minutes to get in and out before light starts. We have it all down to the minutes.
Really?
Do you want the contact information for Cole Chandler, who did the Beloved Community Village?
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
I'd be happy to give it to you.
Okay. Wow, I just had a pocket full of business cards.
I could text it to you, or whatever's easiest.
He's gonna videotape.
Hey guys, we're gonna do a recap when all of this is done, but I'm gonna shut off the film and go to the last speaker of the day with Pikes Peak. We'll do a live stream from there in about 20 minutes, 15 minutes.